After the apocalypse broke out, both my widowed sister-in-law and I became pregnant. She spent all her savings to buy 2 energy crystals, claiming they could repel zombies and save lives. She gave one of them to me. To show my gratitude, I wore it 24 hours a day. On the night of delivery, my sister-in-law and I both went into labor. My sister-in-law gave birth to a big, chubby, fair-skinned boy, but I gave birth to a half-human, half-zombie with bluish-gray skin and twisted limbs. My mother-in-law was furious, crushed the child, and threw the body outside the city. I was then disabled by my husband, who broke my tendons and handed me over to the base security team. This woman gave birth to a zombie. She must be a zombie too. To eliminate any future threat, I was burned alive. After death, my vengeful spirit could not rest, and I saw the truth. It turns out that my healthy fetus had long been swapped out by my widowed sister-in-law using a life-saving crystal. Reborn into a new life, I looked at the pregnant mutated cockroach and handed the crystal to it. Come, sister-in-law, put this on quickly. I went through a lot of trouble to snatch such a good thing for you. Widowed sister-in-law Kathy barged into my and my husband's bedroom, a sly smile on her face. My husband and I were being affectionate when we heard a noise, and I instinctively pulled my collar tight and sat up, but in the next moment, my vision blurred. When my gaze refocused on my sister-in-law's mysterious face, I realized that I had actually been reborn. Without waiting for my response, my sister-in-law plopped down on my wedding bed and, right in front of my husband, pulled out 2 thumb-sized transparent crystals from her inner pocket. My sister-in-law blushed and smiled. Sis, don't be put off. I spent a fortune on this at the black market, and I hid it here because I was afraid someone might snatch it away. This crystal has the power to mask the scent of the living and repel zombies. It's not easy for us sisters-in-law to get pregnant in this post-apocalyptic world. I hope that with this, we can all give birth healthily and safely in the future. I stared at that crystal, which had brought me so much suffering, grinding my back teeth so hard they nearly bled. In my past life, I was touched by my sister-in-law's thoughtfulness and wore it every day. Whether it was useful or not, little did I know. This was a poisoned crystal infused with supernatural powers. It took away my healthy fetus and indirectly caused the deaths of my parents and me. My sister-in-law and I were university alumni. Before the apocalypse, we had little contact and never held any grudges against each other. After the apocalypse, her family was taken care of by my parents, which allowed them to live in the safest residential area of the base. Not long ago, my brother-in-law went out on a mission and was bitten to death by zombies. I sympathize with my sister-in-law, who just lost her husband and found out she is pregnant with his posthumous child, so I have been taking extra care of her. Not only did I lend her enough base points to cover her food and living expenses for 5 years, but I also gave her plenty of nutritional supplements. Even the daily household chores were shared between my mother-in-law and me, and she was rarely asked to do any work. I never expected that the person I treated as one of my own and cared for so much would turn out to be a vicious and ungrateful wolf in sheep's clothing. Even the points she used to buy crystals were provided by me, the victim. In my previous life, shortly after I put on the crystal, my body began to show problems. My appetite grew increasingly voracious, and I developed a strong craving for raw, cold, and heavily blood-scented foods. It was almost like living a primitive, blood-drinking existence. My sleep also became extremely fragile, my immunity declined, and coupled with always eating raw food, parasites soon infested my body. Every day, my internal organs ached as if they were being twisted and crushed. Stretch marks as thick as a baby's arm began to appear on my body. Those marks spread all over my body, and no matter how much skincare I applied, it was useless. In the end, they cracked open, oozing foul-smelling pus. My husband gradually grew disgusted with me and became unwilling to be intimate. But considering he had once saved my life in a fire, my parents couldn't bring themselves to criticize him too harshly. As I approached my due date, my weight had increased to over 300 pounds, my belly was so swollen that I couldn't even see my own toes when I looked down, yet my arms and legs remained as thin as they were before pregnancy. The rapid weight gain and physical weakness made it difficult for me to even get up on my own. During this time, not only did my appearance become less appealing, but even personal hygiene issues made me feel deeply humiliated. As an adult, I had to rely on my mother to change my diapers and wash my body. If mom is away on a mission and my mother-in-law can't take care of me alone, I have no choice but to stew in the filth. On the day I was 2 centimeters dilated. The pain in my abdomen made me break out in a cold sweat. The sweat fermented in the stifling heat, quickly emitting a nauseating stench. The strength ability bodyguard, wearing a mask, pushed me impatiently toward the hospital, a stark contrast to the warm and friendly attitude he always had before I got pregnant. The patients I encountered along the way all mocked me, just like a mutated wild boar, dirty, fat, and smelly. Yeah. Food and medical resources are scarce in this post-apocalyptic world, yet she's managed to get so fat. What a burden. Living is just a waste of resources. She might as well have died in the delivery room. Leo had long since hidden far away, afraid that someone would find out it was him who got this wild boar pregnant. In stark contrast to me is my sister-in-law, Kathy. She only had fuller breasts and hips, with none of the pregnancy symptoms that cause ugliness, such as swelling, hair loss, pigmentation, or obesity. Moreover, because she ate many good things my family sent during her pregnancy, even her acne scars and fine lines disappeared, and her skin became very fair, smooth, and tender. Every day, many men come to the base to show their affection for my sister-in-law, and quite a few of them are capable individuals with special abilities. During childbirth, my sister-in-law and I both went into labor at the same time in the delivery room, as my mother-in-law had hoped. My sister-in-law gave birth safely to a healthy baby boy weighing 7 pounds and 2 ounces. The baby cried loudly, with big, bright eyes. As for me, I was initially asked to have a natural birth, but when it became clear that I couldn't deliver that way, I was finally allowed to have a C-section. By this time, my sister-in-law had already given birth, but I was still struggling in the delivery room. It wasn't until the critical condition notice was issued that a deformed baby was finally born. With bluish-gray skin, white eyeballs, and twisted, deformed limbs, the placenta was a sack of pus weighing several pounds. As soon as the baby was delivered, the placenta fell to the ground and burst open, splattering thick, yellow-green pus all over the floor. By then, more than 10 hours had passed. Knowing the child was safely born, I was so exhausted I couldn't utter a single word. My eyes rolled back, and I completely lost consciousness when I woke up again. My mother had been urgently recalled to the base for a mission. My husband and his family were nowhere to be seen, with only my father keeping watch by my side. I asked to see the baby, but when my father wheeled me to the nursery, I was told that my mother-in-law had already taken the child away. I was distraught. Where did she take my child? That's the baby I risked my life to give birth to. In my agitated state, the freshly stitched wound on my abdomen began to bleed again. My husband and his sister-in-law walked out of the hallway, their eyes cold and indifferent as they looked at me. My sister-in-law sneered, "You should take a look at what you've given birth to. How dare you make such a scene here? If I were you, I would have already ended it all to spare the family the shame." I glared at her with resentment. "Who do you think you are to lecture me like this?" My husband flew into a rage and slapped me hard across the face. "Jenny, is that any way to speak to your elder sister-in-law?" The blow left my ears ringing, tears welling in my eyes as I cried out, heartbroken, "Leo, she's just your sister-in-law. I'm your wife, the mother of your child. How could you hit me like this just to defend her?" My father was furious. "Before and after the apocalypse, you're the first one who dares to bully my precious daughter right in front of me." My father is tall, nearly 6'3", and at that moment, he effortlessly grabbed his son-in-law by the collar. Just as he was about to teach him a lesson, he caught sight of a fresh lipstick stain on the inside of his shirt. Looking at Kathy's lips, the vibrant color of her lipstick was unmistakable, exactly matching the shade on the shirt. "We're all men. What's there that we can't understand?" "Fine. I was wondering why you were helping outsiders bully your own wife and children like this. So you've been having an affair with your widowed sister-in-law all along, you shameless, despicable pair. Just wait to be expelled from the base." The husband looked flustered. Father-in-law, let me explain. It's all a misunderstanding." He leaned in and bent over, as if about to kneel and beg for mercy, but in the moment Dad let his guard down, he decisively stabbed with the knife. My father was just an ordinary businessman with no special abilities. After the apocalypse, he was hired by a caravan due to his accumulated resources and excellent management skills. Leo, on the other hand, was a firefighter before the apocalypse, with exceptional physical strength. My father was no match for him after being ambushed, and I, in my postpartum weakness, was pinned under Kathy's foot, unable to move. They killed my father right before my eyes and then framed me for it, making it look like a zombie had gone on a rampage. They cut out my tongue, severed my tendons, and dragged me, stripped of all dignity, before the base's security team. "Captain, this woman gave birth to a zombie, and it bit her own father to death. To prevent her from causing more harm, her sister-in-law and I had no choice but to sever the tendons in her arms and legs and bring her here. Yes, It was heartbreaking to see my sister-in-law turn into a zombie, but the safety of the entire base comes first. Please lock her up quickly. This adulterous couple shamelessly twisted the truth, shifting all the blame onto me, and were even praised by the security team as a righteous example of sacrificing family for the greater good. Before giving birth, my bizarre appearance was obvious to everyone, and since my father held a key position in the base's merchant team, the charge of causing his death was severe. I was quickly dragged onto the execution platform. Flames engulfed my body, and scorching smoke filled my mouth and nose. Burning my throat with a searing pain, my brain grew hazy from lack of oxygen, yet I could still clearly feel the excruciating pain of my skin being burned piece by piece. My flesh gradually died, but my vengeful spirit lingered above the remains, unable to disperse for a long time. On the night I was burned to death, my mother returned from her mission. I saw with my own eyes how my mother, a high-spirited superhuman, fell gravely ill after being deceived by Leo. She refused to eat or sleep, constantly blaming herself for choosing work over staying with me. Gradually, she attributed the tragedy of my father and me turning against each other to herself. After my mother's health deteriorated, Leo, under the pretense of caring for her, controlled her with drugs. In the end, he led her to end her own life under the influence of intense hallucinations. My mother is a spatial ability user, and all the supplies our family stockpiled are stored in her space. After my mother's death, all the supplies burst out, and along with our family of 3's base points, they were all seized by Leo. After that, he didn't even bother to handle my mother's funeral arrangements and quickly announced the inheritance of 2 family branches along with the property. It was also at this time that I found out that Leo's brother, David, was also killed by the 2 of them. David has a high demand for sex. Since being stuck at home after the apocalypse, he always wears Kathy out, leaving her so exhausted that she has no energy or interest in her affair with Leo. Out of jealousy and to continue the affair, Leo deliberately lured zombies to bite his own brother, while he took the opportunity to sleep with Kathy in his brother's bed. Unexpectedly, David has an extraordinary physique. After being attacked by zombies, he not only survived but immediately returned home to have make-up sex with his wife to calm his nerves, because the 2 encounters were too close together. Kathy became pregnant and couldn't be sure who the father was. Affected by the radiation of the apocalypse, humans have become less fertile. Kathy didn't want to miss what might be her only chance to get pregnant in her lifetime, so she coquettishly insisted on keeping the baby. Leo smirked lewdly. Although I'm sure it's mine, even if it's my brother's, it's fine. It'll be like leaving him an heir, a life for a life. Moreover, the base offers a substantial fertility subsidy. Having come to this realization, this adulterous couple once again plotted against David and killed him. After that, to eliminate any risk, they even schemed to swap Kathy and me in the womb. Pitifully, my family was murdered for their wealth, and the child of my blood now recognizes the enemy as their mother, recalling all the events of my past life. I was so enraged that I nearly shed tears of blood. Seeing that I hadn't spoken for a while, my sister-in-law looked somewhat hurt and said, "Sister-in-law, what are you thinking? Do you not like this crystal?" My husband quickly interjected, "How could that be, sister-in-law? Such a fine thing, and it's a token of your affection. How could Jenny possibly not like it? She just hasn't processed it yet." With that, he took it upon himself to accept it on my behalf. Noticing the eagerness in their eyes, I silently cursed my past self for being so easily deceived by the appearance of love. I feigned reluctance and said, "Sister-in-law, this is such a wonderful item, perhaps you should keep it for the child after they're born." "That won't do, since I'm giving it to you. Just take it. As for the child's share, your sister-in-law will give it to him later." With a hypocritically sweet expression, my sister-in-law reminded me, "Sister-in-law, you're pregnant now, so your top priority should be a safe delivery. Remember to wear this crystal 24/7 so it can work its magic, okay? Don't worry, sister-in-law, I'll make sure she does." My husband patted his chest in assurance, then looked at me with deep affection. "Jenny, we're living in the apocalypse now. We can never be too careful. Promise me you won't be stubborn during this time. Wear the crystal at all times and stay safe until the baby is born, all right?" I took the opportunity to grasp my husband and sister-in-law's hands in return. "All right, I certainly won't let your kindness go to waste." Seeing the crystal successfully put on, both my sister-in-law and husband looked visibly more at ease. It's just that my sister-in-law was still lingering, reluctant to leave our room. Having lived through my past life, I naturally knew it was her jealousy at play. Deliberately bringing up the crystal at this time was meant to ruin our intimate moment as a couple. this actually works in my favor as someone who has been reborn. I lightly tapped my husband on the chest and said, since we can't sleep now anyway, get ready and take me back to my parents' home, right now. My husband glanced at the time. It was not even 6 o'clock yet. So what? My dad's job isn't as easy as yours. He's heading out to the base again tomorrow. He leaves in the morning. And if I go back now, I can still see him before he sets off. After the apocalypse, my husband took on a clerical job in the inner district of the base. This kind of work is not only stable but also safe, essentially a cushy position reserved for families with special contributions. For example, Leo got his job because my dad is a caravan leader and my mom is an official space ability user for the base. When it comes to my dad, my husband can't openly object, so he just coaxes me, saying, I just feel bad that you're working so hard while pregnant, and I'm worried you're not getting enough rest. My sister-in-law also chimed in, yes, sister-in-law, it's still too early now. All right then, I said, being very agreeable, my hand half hidden under the thin blanket as I reached for my husband's buttons. Let's lie down for a while longer and pass the time. My sister-in-law glanced at the faint morning erection visible under the thin blanket and quickly changed her tune. Leo, it's more important for a pregnant woman to maintain a good mood. If your wife wants to go home to visit, just go along with her. Hurry up and get out of bed. Don't be lazy. I'll go out and make breakfast for you. Before closing the door, I anxiously reminded them, the noodles will be ready in 10 minutes. Hurry up, or they'll get soggy and won't taste good. The man I discarded like worn-out shoes was my sister-in-law's treasure. All morning, I deliberately ordered Leo around for every little thing, one moment asking him to pull out my chair, the next having him blow on my noodles to cool them, watching my husband attend to my every need and even wrapping his arm around my waist to ride me home on his bike. My sister-in-law was so furious she nearly ground her teeth to dust. Passing through the sentry post and arriving at my own gate, I said to my husband, you can leave me here. Give me your salary card, I'll buy something for my parents. All right, don't hesitate to spend. Consider it my way of showing respect to your parents. Even though the salary card contained almost all of his savings, he handed it over without a second thought. Truth be told, I had always been overly romantic in the past. No matter how freely I spent my own money, I never recklessly used his or his family's funds. The more he said things like that, the more my heart ached for him. And the more I praised him in front of my parents. In the end, I always spend a little money to get him even more good things from my parents' home. My husband thought he could win big with a small bet this time too, but he didn't know that I was really planning to make him fall back into poverty, go back and freshen up, be more attentive at work these days. I straightened my husband's clothes, not even wanting to let him inside, and made up an excuse to send him away. All right. My husband glanced at my stomach and misunderstood, thinking my parents would help him out for the sake of the child. A promotion is imminent. Leo's expression was momentarily complex. He held me, kissed my hair, gave a word of caution, and then left. What Leo said was, keep the crystal with you, I'll come see you after work. He is still planning to harm me. I am not surprised by this. In my previous life, I was harmed by crystal. After becoming pregnant, my body grew uglier day by day. To compensate their son-in-law, my parents allocated him a large amount of base points and gave him many valuable items that were unavailable within the base. His parents truly held nothing back from him, yet he still didn't stop. In the end, what Leo wanted wasn't mom and dad and me to be shamed into pleasing him for a lifetime. From the very beginning, he was aiming to take everything and leave nothing. In my past life, after sending off my father, I foolishly returned from my parents' home. But in this life, I won't be so naive again. I kept pestering and pleading until my father's team agreed to take me to the outer and fringe areas of the base. In my previous life, I had always stayed in the safest inner zone. The world had become much harsher, yet I hadn't made any progress compared to my younger self. That wasn't good. While it's still early in my pregnancy, I want to get more exposure to the outside world. No one knows when the apocalypse will end. And I can't afford to remain so detached from society. My parents didn't support the idea at first. Mom said, with Leo by your side to care for you, and your dad and I working hard outside, you can be a carefree little princess for life without having to struggle so much. I retorted, Mom, have you ever thought about what if Leo isn't a devoted husband like Dad? My parents were stunned. The reason they feel at ease grooming their son-in-law is because they trust the relationship between Leo and me. But if this premise doesn't exist, and resources continue to be allocated to others while allowing me to slack off, wouldn't that actually harm me? After initially persuading my parents, I successfully expanded my scope of action. while strolling through the mobile market in the outer district of the base with my superpowered bodyguard. I encountered a craftsman who had fled for his life and only had a one-day temporary stay permit. "Is it dangerous out there?" I asked. The craftsman glanced at me and said, "Yeah, you definitely look like someone who's been living in the base all along. You have no idea. Outside the base, there's a swarm of mutated cockroaches now. For those of us without a base to call home, life has been nothing short of miserable. Do you want to stay in the base permanently?" I pulled out a zombie crystal core. This is the hard currency of the post-apocalyptic world. It takes killing about 50 zombies to find just one, making it extremely difficult to obtain. With this, no matter which base you're in, you can live comfortably for a year or so. The craftsman's eyes lit up, and he lowered his voice to ask, "What do you need me to do?" 2 hours later, the craftsman quickly crafted an identical crystal necklace for me. I inquired about the location where the mutated cockroaches appeared, coated the real crystal necklace with zombie crystal powder, and used the merchant convoy's detection drone to drop it at the designated spot. The zombie crystal powder contained a massive amount of energy. The pregnant southern female cockroach, unable to resist the temptation and taking advantage of its doubled size during pregnancy, eliminated other mutated cockroaches attempting to compete for it and swallowed the crystal in one gulp. I gave a cruel smile. "Didn't you want to change the tire? Then don't blame me for returning the favor 1,000-fold. These mutated southern cockroaches gathered near our base are as large as an adult man's thigh, and their threat level has increased accordingly, but they have developed a fatal weakness. Before mutation, female cockroaches laid eggs every 7 to 10 days. With the eggs exposed to the air, and natural hatching could be completed within 1 to 3 months. After mutation, the birth of larvae requires the mother to incubate them, although the incubation time is shortened to within 48 hours. If hatching cannot be completed during this period, all the larvae inside the egg case will die. In the previous life, the base relied on this very point to carry out a sterilization campaign aimed at wiping out their offspring, ultimately defeating them. I told my mother about the habits of the mutated cockroaches, claiming I had observed and summarized them myself, and asked her to contact the base to verify. From receiving the report to initiating the project, it will still take quite some time, but compared to the previous life, it is bound to reduce many sacrifices. After finishing these tasks, I sprawled out and relaxed in my sunroom. Half an hour later, my husband indeed came over as soon as he got off work. He sat behind me and gently massaged my temples. "Did you have a good time visiting your parents today?" "Happy," I replied with my eyes closed. "Would you like to come back with me after dinner today, or would you rather stay home for one more night and have me pick you up early tomorrow before I go to work?" My husband whispered softly in my ear, his voice low and coaxing. In the past, no matter how reluctant I felt, I would have pulled myself together for this. I couldn't bear the thought of him making the trip back and forth, so I would have gone back with him early. But now, I said, "I'm not going back." "What?" The husband couldn't control his emotions for a moment and stood up. Hearing the commotion, Mom poked her head out from the kitchen and tried to smooth things over, saying, "Old Yi is leaving early tomorrow morning. Let Jenny stay at home for a few more days to keep me company." "Leo, you're not worried that I can't take good care of your wife, are you?" The husband quickly put on a smile and said, No, of course not. I'm just worried that you'll have to work and take care of Jenny at the same time. It's too much for you. My mom already promised me she'd take care of Jenny throughout her pregnancy. Jenny told me your sister-in-law is also pregnant. Taking care of 2 daughters-in-law at once will only get more and more exhausting. Since I'm here at the base, let me help share the load a bit more. My mom skillfully deflected the suggestion. At my parents' place, Leo can't possibly force me to go back with him. He could only pretend to be pitiful, sighing and pinching my nose, saying, "You heartless little thing, with your parents spoiling you, you don't want your husband after being apart for less than a day." Poor me, going back to sleep alone with a cold pillow. "I'll just have to come see my sweet wife again tomorrow." All right, you're dismissed," I said playfully, waving my hand, though I felt utterly disgusted inside. "You'll sleep alone with a cold pillow. I bet tonight, my pillow will be warmed by Kathy instead." However, that rotten cucumber really kept his word, coming to see me every day before and after work, rain or shine. Even the guards at the post recognized him. Whenever they saw my mother and me, they would always praise me for my good fortune, saying that I had married a husband who knew how to care for his wife. In my previous life, I would have been both touched and moved, sweetly returning home with my husband, but in this second chance at life, I see things clearly. My husband is afraid I might slip away, so he comes every day to keep an eye on the situation. A week after my husband came alone, my sister-in-law began to worry and often accompanied him. She claimed it was because she missed me, but if I so much as glanced at my own husband, she would nervously step between us, seeing how closely she watched him. I couldn't help but find it amusing. She thinks her own shit smells good and is even afraid that I might fight her for it. I find it satisfying and take great pleasure in flaunting my affection with my husband. My sister-in-law watched from the side, grinding her back teeth in frustration, yet she had to force a smile and say, "Seeing how well you two get along as a couple, as your sister-in-law, can rest assured." Day by day, time passed, and the base's team set out to exterminate the mutant cockroaches. This operation is expected to last a month. During this time, my sister-in-law's belly swelled up like a balloon. The pregnancy symptoms that had appeared on me in my previous life began to return to her with even greater intensity. Her hair fell out in large clumps, but only from the front and top of her head. The sides remained completely untouched, which looked especially comical. To deal with this, my sister-in-law started wearing a wig. Just because she started to love eating spoiled food, her body began to emit a sour, putrid odor. The threat of that smell was almost tangible. Even the person emitting the stench had to stay in a well-ventilated area to avoid being overwhelmed by it. The wind easily blew off her wig, and whenever a breeze passed, her sister-in-law would nervously reach to adjust it, but the act of adjusting the wig would expose the shell-like stretch marks on her neck and arms. I am in my own sunroom, looking down at the figures of my sister-in-law and my husband from above. The two were originally walking one after the other, but after my sister-in-law's distracted fumbling, my husband subtly distanced himself from her. I read their lips. "Leo, are you annoyed with me?" "Of course not. I'm just in a hurry. It's getting late. Let's walk a bit faster." "All right, but I'm carrying your Lincoln family's child, so I can't walk too fast. Come over and support me." Through the binoculars, I watched them exchanging flirtatious glances while the other looked utterly disgusted, finding it quite amusing. Even in her own condition, my sister-in-law still insists on coming to entertain me. How can this not be considered a deep bond between sisters-in-law? The first one who couldn't stand it any longer was actually the guard. A young man with a crew cut secretly tipped me off. "Sister Yi, it was my fault before. I accepted your husband's cigarettes and thought it was just an ordinary marital quarrel that made you go back to your parents' home. That's why I said a lot of good things on his behalf, but now I can really see it. Your husband and your sister-in-law have an inappropriate relationship. They don't know that even the deserted areas here are covered with surveillance cameras, and they're always sneaking around and getting physical on their way to see you. You must keep your eyes wide open and not be soft-hearted, or you'll be deceived by them." "All right, I understand." Even the sentries were bribed and used by Leo. No wonder, after my father's death in my previous life, I was so easily executed as a zombie. This scheming person has probably already bribed everyone from top to bottom. I was seething with hatred inside, but I tried not to show it on my face, continuing to receive the two of them as usual every day, although I disdained it. My peach blossom-like face and graceful figure still formed a stark contrast with my sister-in-law, especially the fake crystal necklace hanging around my neck. Its position made my husband's daily confirming glances no longer innocent. The way my husband looked at me grew increasingly fervent, igniting a raging jealousy in my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law is suffering from severe morning sickness, and her body is becoming more and more unattractive day by day. She finally gave up on coming all the way to my house to suffer. My husband, however, still insists on coming every day. When he comes, he can't hide his exhausted look, yet he still puts on a show of being affectionate and gentle in front of me. I leaned back on the sofa and nudged my husband, who was trimming my toenails, with my foot. "You shouldn't come over so often lately. Sister-in-law doesn't look well during her pregnancy, and her body is getting weaker day by day. Take some tonics with you later and have mother cook them for her." Pregnancy itself is a process that drains one's energy and vitality, especially when what's growing inside isn't a human fetus. We still need to help sister-in-law replenish her strength, so that whatever is in her belly has more energy to torment its parents. Unaware of the truth, my husband said, "Jenny, you're so kind, as beautiful in heart as you are in appearance." After saying that, he tried to take my hand. I dodged with a laugh. "You just finished trimming your toenails and now you want to touch me?" My husband pounced directly. "I don't mind, my wife's feet are fragrant too." Just as he was about to press down on me, I poked his nose with a finger and pushed him away. "Stop the sweet talk." The husband was startled. "How come since I got pregnant, it's like I've been taking some super tonic, my strength has gotten so much bigger?" before he could think it through. I interrupted by taking a bag of things from the cabinet. These are all good items distributed by my parents' workplace. Take them, head back early, or you might miss the curfew. As the apocalypse grew increasingly severe, the base had implemented a curfew system. The husband still wanted to say something, but after my repeated urging, he left carrying the items, looking as if he had gotten a great deal. I glanced at the maxed-out salary card and sneered, "Eat up, eat up. Your entire fortune is in that bag." More than half a month later, the base's expedition team returned triumphantly after defeating the mutated cockroaches. At this time, I was only in my second trimester, while my sister-in-law showed many signs of impending labor, clearly about to give birth. My sister-in-law sensed something was wrong and came to my house to confront me. We got pregnant at the same time. "So why is your belly still so small? Don't get so close to me, it's disgusting." I waved my hand in front of my face and put on a mask to block the foul odor coming from her. My sister-in-law is indeed as humiliated as I was in my past life. Gritting her teeth in silent resentment, I said cheerfully, "Who doesn't carry a baby for 10 months? I've only been pregnant for a little over 4 months, so isn't this normal? I think it's you who's not normal." "How is that possible? My pregnancy is normal." "It's yours that isn't human." My sister-in-law, stung by my words, grew frantic. As she rushed forward to grab me, she noticed I was still wearing the crystal necklace and broke into a mix of tears and laughter. "You've been wearing it all along, so why is this happening?" "Of course, it's because this one is a fake I made." I smiled slightly, then immediately subdued her, when both the sister-in-law and the mutated female cockroach were the replacement crystal. The production times on both sides are forcibly synchronized. The base team returned with a great victory, but the sister-in-law's stomach showed no abnormalities, clearly indicating that there were still some who had slipped through the net. I tore the replacement crystal off the sister-in-law and had my mother hand it over to the base. The base has special ability users who can use items of the same origin to search, making it no problem to uncover the layers of potential threats. Yes. My purpose in changing the crystal was never just about revenge from the start. Revenge must be taken, but scum is also a resource. Recycling them can, at the very least, contribute some value to the survivors in this post-apocalyptic world. The base team's suppressive fire seemed to have a labor-inducing effect on the mutated mother cockroach. At noon the next day, my sister-in-law, who had been under house arrest by me for 2 days, finally met Lincoln's family, but before she could even say a word, she was escorted into the small clinic by my superhuman bodyguard. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, my sister-in-law gave birth, quickly producing over 90 egg cases in succession. Damn it, they're insect eggs. The mother-in-law splashed the entire bucket of boiling water prepared for the delivery directly down. The sister-in-law couldn't dodge in time and got splashed with a lot of boiling water, severely scalding her lower abdomen and thighs. She screamed hysterically, "You crazy old woman, are you trying to scald me to death?" The mother-in-law, both shocked and furious, spat and said, "It'd be better if you were scalded to death, you shameless woman. I knew you couldn't stand the loneliness, but I never expected that the so-called posthumous child was actually fathered by a beast. How hateful that I've been busy taking care of you all this time." The husband never expected things to turn out this way, his face turning pale and then ashen. Meanwhile, the mutated mother cockroach had also given birth. The zombie baby it gave birth to was almost as large as itself, and during the delivery, all its internal organs were torn out together. Shortly after giving birth, it quickly died. The zombie infant wailed, instinctively gnawing on the other egg sacs in the nest, only to be discovered and attacked by other mutated cockroaches. The base team lured dozens of zombies over, waiting until both the zombies and the mutated cockroaches were severely weakened before finishing them off. By the time the base team returned triumphantly, Kathy had already been burned to death. Before her death, she was beaten and kicked by Leo, who turned on her and cursed, "This adulteress, tangled up with cockroaches, might just bring more harm to our family in the future. No, we must deal with her and these bastards immediately." The mother-in-law shielded my belly and said angrily, "Yes, don't let her hurt my real precious grandson." Kathy was quickly knocked unconscious, because she was too busy cursing at the three of us. She didn't have time to reveal our true identities to the other party before Leo swiftly severed her tendons and sent her to the enforcement squad to be cremated. This almost exactly replicated the way I died in my previous life. Past and present, Leo's ways of harming people are nothing new. There is no woman he cannot abandon. After Kathy's death, Leo acted as if nothing had happened and tried to embrace me. "I know you don't like living with your sister-in-law, but that bitch has turned to ashes. no one will ever get in your way again. Jenny, you can come home with me now. When did I ever say I couldn't stand my sister-in-law? I sneered at him. You must have heard it from Kathy and remembered it wrong, didn't you? Leo looked embarrassed. It really was that wretched woman who said it. I only took care of her out of respect for her being my late brother's widow. I never expected her to be so jealous of you. I've advised her many times in private, but I slipped up just now. Then, as if to stand up for me, he let out a string of curses. I rolled my eyes. Enough, enough, you're the father of her child. Cursing your dead mistress in front of me doesn't make me think any better of you. Leo was thunderstruck. You knew everything. Before I even turned around, I smoothly dropped to my knees, avoiding any mention of the tire change, and only admitted to the lightest offense. It was all Kathy who seduced me. I was momentarily bewitched. Jenny, my heart has always been with you. What man doesn't make mistakes? For the sake of our child, please forgive me this time. I'll definitely change for the better. Our child can't grow up without a father. Leo and I met because of a fire. I regarded him, a firefighter, as my savior, but it wasn't until after my death in my previous life that I learned the fire was actually caused by a cigarette but he carelessly tossed away. He was smoking in the emergency exit and casually closed the door, trapping me in the fire, but I was tricked by him and Kathy into being pursued, ultimately inviting a wolf into the house. But if he thinks I'll be as foolish as before, he's sorely mistaken. I didn't reveal everything I knew, every day. I made Leo suffer a little as payback, then followed it up with a few caring words to make up for it. Even when he tried to force himself on me, I just used my pregnant belly as a shield and personally gave him a good beating, then locked him in the study to reflect on his actions. Such soft-heartedness made him mistakenly believe that there was still hope in winning her back, but I was waiting for that day to come. Finally, the divine punishment ability user at the base awakened. This newly promoted warden, who had transitioned from an outsourced role, quickly sorted out the wrongful, false, and unjust cases that had occurred since the base was established. This gradually brought order to the rapidly expanding base. In his previous life, Leo seized my family's resources, got the news early, hired bodyguards, and took Kathy and his mother-in-law away from the base to live freely in another major base, evading justice. In this life, I opened the door to welcome law enforcement. Leo was captured at lightning speed. After being dismissed from public office, he awaits the execution of divine punishment. If Leo had still held any hope that I hadn't sought revenge on him, he should truly envy Kathy's manner of death now. Lightning strikes, suffocation, jumping from a building, animal attacks. After Leo was struck by the divine punishment ability, his spirit died over and over again, only to regrow flesh and blood each time to face the next death. This cycle repeated until his body completely rotted away, and only then did the ability dissipate, and I had already frozen him when collecting the corpse. 2 months later, I gave birth smoothly to a healthy baby boy. My mother-in-law, who had already been driven to the outer district of the base, begged to see her grandson, even going so far as to kneel and kowtow. This is the last hope of our Lincoln family, please. Just let me see him once, just once. Unfortunately, the password was wrong. If she hadn't been so fixated on bloodline and gender, I might have shown her a little more mercy. Now, considering that although her values are not right, she hasn't really harmed me in either this life or the previous one, I will at most spare her life. Being able to survive in the outer area of the base is already luckier than many others in this post-apocalyptic world. As for anything more, I won't give it. In this life, my body did not deteriorate during pregnancy, and I smoothly awakened the insight ability in the second trimester, which can disrupt the effects of others' abilities. After awakening my abilities, my 5 senses and strength have all been enhanced, coupled with the abundant resources from my core. Through cultivation, my physical fitness has long surpassed that of ordinary people. After the baby was weaned, I underwent systematic training and joined the base's enforcer team for ability users. My daily duties involve maintaining order in the base and punishing the misuse of abilities. A year later, as the base expanded, the status of the enforcer team also rose significantly. By the time I caught an ability user illegally selling conversion crystals and personally executed him, I had already become the top female officer of the enforcer team. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. The extreme cold apocalypse is approaching, and I have drawn a spot to go to the safe house. I immediately called my husband and told the whole family to set off right away, but when I got home, my husband had actually invited the neighbor and her child to come along. I said there weren't enough spots. But he didn't take it seriously and said we'd figure it out at the safe house. After enduring countless hardships, just as we were about to arrive, my husband finally dropped the pretense. He teamed up with the mother and son next door to torment my daughter and me for 3 days and 3 nights. It wasn't until my daughter's arms were severed and I was on the brink of death that the neighbor's son finally spoke in anger. "You wretch! You tore my family apart, you deserve to die." To let my daughter live, I kept kowtowing and begging them to spare her, but even after my voice grew hoarse from screaming, they turned a deaf ear. In my dying moments, I seemed to see their family happily entering the safe house. Not long after, my daughter and I were frozen into ice sculptures by the cold wave, dying with deep resentment. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to 1 week before the apocalypse arrived. On the street, the phone screen kept flashing with alerts. Extreme cold wave arriving in 6 days and 5 hours. Please proceed to the safety shelter as soon as possible. I was stunned for a long time before I realized I had been reborn. After being tortured for 3 days and nights and freezing to death, I had actually returned to 1 week before the cold wave arrived. In my previous life, I was fortunate enough to win a spot in the National Safety Shelter, allowing me to bring 3 family members. During the family discussion, our neighbor Rose, coincidentally, overheard and tearfully begged us to take her and her child along. On the way to the safety shelter, Bob and I argued incessantly. I believed we should have told Rose in advance that the spots were limited, but he insisted on waiting until we arrived to tell her. It wasn't until Bob used every means to force me to hand over the safe house access code that I finally realized the truth. His words, "We'll talk when we get there," were actually meant for me. "Mom, why are you spacing out?" My daughter's warm little hands suddenly hugged me. I felt her soft body, and my eyes instantly grew warm. In the previous life, to force the access code out of me, Bob chopped off our daughter's arm right in front of me. Faced with our own daughter's desperate pleas, he didn't even bat an eye. I clenched my jaw tightly, suppressing the urge to go after Bob immediately, and gently stroked my daughter's hair. "Mom is fine. Mom just misses Anna too much." After putting my daughter to sleep, I immediately started taking action. I can't afford to break with them just yet. In the midst of the apocalypse, humanity has fallen into depravity. Only by enduring for now can I protect my daughter and ensure she survives safely. I rushed into the deserted digital mall, pried open the counter, and grabbed a new phone. I replaced it with a newly purchased anonymous SIM card and changed the contact name to Safe House Official. I copied the cold wave alert message I had received, modified the key information and the number of spots available, and resent it to the new phone. Such mass messages are impossible to verify for authenticity. I practiced in front of my phone for 10 minutes, making sure my voice trembled before making the call. "Honey, what are you doing?" "Oh, I'm out here pulling some strings, trying to see if I can get into the safe house." In the background on his end, there was the faint sound of porcelain clinking. "The apocalypse is coming, and you're still running out every day." I used to really believe he was looking for a way out, until Rose said with a smile before I died, "Enjoy the last moments with the family." So, every time we talked, she leaned in Bob's arms, while mother-in-law Fiona sat nearby making tea and watching the show. "This time, it's my turn to watch them perform. Listen to me calmly, and don't let anyone else notice anything unusual." Bob's breathing suddenly quickened. "Did you get the spot?" A gasp came from the other end of the phone, immediately followed by violent coughing. I pretended not to hear. "6 spots, absolutely do not let this get out." 6, his voice trembled. "At this time, how could, so we have to be careful with the arrangements." "I know." I gripped my phone tightly. I was thinking, since neither of our families have many relatives left, why not invite Rose and her family? Bob's tone instantly turned wary. "Why bring them? These spots can fetch a high price on the black market. In this apocalypse, do you still care about that? Rose has been so good to Mom, and it's tough for her to raise a child alone." I stared at the gray sky outside the window, recalling countless coincidences from the past. Rose always, coincidentally, made the soup that Fiona loved to drink, and Fiona would run to Rose's house every other day, claiming to help take care of the child. It turns out, everything was deliberately arranged. I have to say, they acted so convincingly. I didn't notice any flaws in my previous life. After a long silence on the phone, Bob finally gave in. "All right then, should I go notify Rose now?" "Not yet." His tone suddenly sharpened. "We'll discuss it with Mom tonight before making a decision." In the evening, the mother and son entered the house one after the other, their coats still carrying the chill of the cold. Fiona hypocritically took my hand and said, I heard there are 6 spots. I showed them the fake text message. Their pupils suddenly constricted. In the exchanged glances between the two, there was a barely concealed greed and guilt, exactly the same as in the previous life. The way they stared at the screen, their greed and scheming almost overflowing from their eyes. Even with 6 spots available, they never intended to let me live. Just as expected, after all. Bob later admitted that he only got close to me because of my wealth. He meticulously researched my preferences, pretending to be the perfect husband, not smoking, not drinking, coming home on time every day to cook and do laundry. He considered these actions a great humiliation, and only my death could wash away the shame. He originally planned to stage an accident to take my millions in inheritance, then go back to pick up Rose and their son, but this cold snap interrupted his murder plan, though it didn't extinguish the thought. So, I specifically added the clause, "must be verified in person," in the text message, completely putting an end to their plan. Bob irritably tugged at his collar. "I'll go inform Rose." I deliberately asked him, "Didn't you say you were going to discuss it with Mom?" He paused noticeably. "I texted Mom in advance, and she agreed." Fiona quickly chimed in, "Yes, yes. That's right." I glanced at Fiona's phone, which hadn't been taken out at all on the coffee table, and smiled slightly. "Then you go ahead, Mom, and I will pack the luggage." "I'll go help too." Fiona eagerly put on her coat. "Rose can't handle packing with the child." I can't help but curse under my breath. Is it really that easy for me to take care of our daughter alone? But I agreed readily with my words. "If you don't like tidying up, then don't bother. After all, you won't live long enough to use it anyway. Making it so they can't enter the safe house is too lenient." The image of Rose's son smiling as he handed over the knife flashed through my mind, and a phantom pain shot through my arm. "This time, I'll make them pay 100-fold. At 2 in the morning, the two of them returned, chilled to the bone. I walked out of the bedroom, holding my right shoulder. Bob's concern was flawlessly performed as he hurriedly asked, "What happened? So careless." "I sprained it while moving supplies." I frowned. "I was planning to take turns driving with you, but now I'll have to trouble you all the way." Bob's mouth twitched. In our previous life, he had sprained his wrist right after we set off, forcing me to drive through the blizzard the entire time. He finally dropped the act, his tone laced with irritation. "How could you be so careless?" In the parking lot, the car's temperature display showed -20 degrees Celsius outside. Anna was fast asleep in the safety seat, and we waited for 20 minutes, but there was still no sign of Rose and her child. "The same thing happened in my past life," I urged anxiously. "Should we go up and hurry them? It's almost dawn, and it won't be good if someone sees us." Fiona immediately defended them. "What's wrong with letting the child sleep a little longer? Chenan is still growing." When Jack finally appeared, he was indeed scowling at me, as if the delay was my fault. Not only did he make things difficult for me on the road, but he also bullied my daughter while I was driving. "Whoever wants to call can call this time. I'm not going anyway." The car window was covered in frost. Anna was curled up in a small ball in the back seat, and I sat motionless. "Helen, why don't you go up and call out?" Fiona said. I retorted with her words from the previous life, "Let the child sleep a little longer." "We'll just wait." Bob stomped his foot anxiously. "If we delay any longer, we'll hit the morning rush hour." In the end, Fiona rushed upstairs herself. Half an hour later, Rose appeared, pulling a sleepy-eyed Jack along. Jack was clearly not fully awake, walking at the back with a grumpy face. "Oh," I feigned surprise, "didn't we say to let Justin sleep a bit longer?" I shifted all the blame for being late onto my mother-in-law, and Rose immediately glared at Fiona. The atmosphere between the two of them was clearly tense. I didn't say anything more and silently turned to get on the bus, taking a seat in the last row. Anna was curled up there, fast asleep. Bob forced a smile to smooth things over. "Helen, bring Anna to the front and let Justin lie down in the back to sleep." Just as I stood up, Rose pretended to decline. No need, no need." I took the opportunity to sit back down in my original spot. Fiona saw her grandson was upset and quickly tried to make amends, urging me, "Hurry up." Jack's face darkened even more. He abruptly shook off his grandmother's hand and sat heavily in the middle seat. "Didn't you hear? I said no need, so no need." The roar of the engine drowned out Fiona's sigh. I gently tucked the blanket around Anna. "Good, the seed of hatred has already begun to sprout. All I need to do now is water it lightly, and it will grow strong and healthy." After sighing, Fiona sat in a daze for a moment, then quickly sat down next to Jack and hurriedly took out the warmed sandwiches and milk from the insulated bag, handing them to her grandson. Without even looking up, he grabbed it and started eating. not saying a word. Rose, with practiced ease, opened the passenger door and sat down, only then turning to look at me. A familiar smirk played at the corner of her lips, her eyes full of disdain. "Helen, you don't mind if I sit here, do you?" I'm all too familiar with that look. I used to think it was the unspoken jealousy of a single mother, but now I understand. It was clearly a declaration that Bob was hers, and I was always an outsider. The car sped along, but it wasn't long before that desperate line of traffic appeared again. We were completely stuck less than a kilometer from the highway exit. A large truck had jackknifed it on the ramp to the inspection station, with several badly wrecked cars in front, blocking the road completely. Hope vanished in an instant, and panic poured into the car like ice water. Jack also panicked, his fear turning into rage. "Do you have shit for brains? You dare to rush out without even knowing the way?" In the previous life, I was the one driving, and I bore the brunt of that scolding. Rose and Fiona only knew how to comfort him at the time. "Where's Bob?" Just like his son, dumping all the anxiety on me, blaming me for being reckless and having no plan. But this time, Bob was the one holding the steering wheel. Before he could shift the blame, his own son lashed out at him, and he snapped back irritably. "Who the hell can predict the future? Watch your tone." This was probably the first time the father and son had a direct confrontation. In the previous life, even though the journey was tough and Jack often vented his anger, Bob never once lost his temper with him. He was always exceptionally lenient with his son, a stark contrast to the strictness he showed his daughter. But now it's different. On the path to survival, filled with hope, only to be suddenly blocked here, anyone would find it hard to hold back their frustration. The fastest route is cut off, meaning we have to take a detour, which not only takes longer but also introduces more uncertainties. If other roads are also blocked, abandoning the car and walking is simply not an option to reach the safe house, especially since Bob is the one driving. All the pressure is on him. In my previous life, I was the one under that pressure. Yet no one showed any understanding. This time it was Bob. Jack was stunned for 2 seconds by his father's roar, but then became even more defiant. "I'll say whatever I want to say." Fiona didn't realize her son was on the verge of a breakdown and only focused on protecting her grandson. "All right, Bob, that's enough from both of you." Rose was also unhappy with Bob for scolding her son and muttered under her breath, "You took the wrong road yourself. Why take it out on the child?" Bob completely lost it. He pushed the front door open and got out of the car, then yanked the rear door open, shouting at Jack, "Get out of here." Jack knew Bob was his biological father and understood why Bob had been indulging him all these years, out of that ridiculous sense of guilt. He spent my money to satisfy his material desires and used my resources to get him into good schools. It's a pity. Rotten roots bear rotten fruit. No matter how you raise him, he'll never change. He's just as rotten as his father. Jack stiffened his neck and yelled, "Who do you think you are? Why should I listen to you?" Bob was just momentarily angry, but this retort completely enraged him. He grabbed his son by the collar, trying to overpower him with force, young and impulsive. Jack raised his hand and pushed. He used all his strength, but Bob, being in his prime, had the upper hand. Though he staggered, he didn't let go, instead dragging half of Jack's body out of the car. Fiona quickly stood up to break up the fight, and Jack swung his arm to break free. She lost her balance, and with a thud, the back of her head hit the doorframe, causing her to slump limply to the ground. The dull thud finally made the father and son, who were tearing at each other, stop. Fiona collapsed into the chair, taking a long time to catch her breath. Holding the startled Anna, I feigned concern. "Mom, are you okay?" She struggled to sit up straight, suddenly turned pale, and let out a sharp cry. Her left calf was bent at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. Fiona had severe osteoporosis, and the doctor had long advised her to cut back on coffee and strong tea, but to show off on social media, she never listened. Visiting trendy cafes every day just to fill a 9-square grid for likes. Before I died, she listed my sins, and this was one of them. She said that not letting her drink coffee was me looking down on her and being unwilling to spend money on her. It turns out that all my care was seen as humiliation in her eyes. My hand, gently patting my daughter's back, trembled slightly with emotion, as planned. Fiona was supposed to be the first to die, but now, it seems I don't even need to lift a finger. There's a section of the path ahead that we'll have to crawl through. She definitely won't make it like this. Her mother wailed and groaned for a long time before Bob finally realized. "Mom, what's wrong with you?" "I broke my bone. Take me to the hospital quickly." Bob didn't say a word. "What are you standing there for? It hurts so much." I used to be too filial, which made her mistakenly think her son was the same. After a long silence, Fiona suddenly understood something. Her face turning as pale as paper. Bob, I really can't bear the pain anymore. She always tried to play the victim in front of me, and it worked every time, so she thought it would work on her own son too. Unfortunately, Bob didn't even spare her a glance. Fiona was always good at playing the victim to gain sympathy, a tactic that had worked on me time and again, giving her the mistaken impression that it would work on her own son as well. Unfortunately, Bob remained completely unmoved. Not even showing any intention of stepping forward to check on her, he stood just outside the car door, his brow furrowed, his face filled with dissatisfaction at his own mother's lack of understanding. I pretended to be anxious and urged, "Honey, what are you waiting for? Hurry and take Mom to the hospital." "No." Before Bob could speak, Rose cut in first. Fiona stared at her in disbelief. "You, Rose, you heartless thing. I've spoiled you for nothing." She began to sob uncontrollably. But Rose paid no attention. When your life is on the line, who cares about keeping up appearances? In the end, they didn't go to the hospital. Bob, with a grim expression, turned the car around and headed toward the nearby national highway. Fiona, seeing that crying was useless, gradually quieted down, leaving only intermittent moans. She was truly in severe pain. In fact, simply immobilizing the injured area and giving her a painkiller would have helped a lot. But it was unclear whether Bob and Rose hadn't thought of it or simply couldn't be bothered. I watched her miserable state, feeling an indescribable sense of satisfaction. Suddenly, a sharp brake sent Fiona, who wasn't wearing a seatbelt, lurching forward. Instinctively, she tried to brace herself with both feet, including the broken one. Instantly, a scream of agony echoed through the car. Anna, whom I had just lulled to sleep, was startled awake again. Her wet eyes met mine and quickly calmed down. I gently stroked her soft shoulder, thinking it was still far from enough. The suffering Fiona endured is not even 1/10,000th of what my daughter and I went through in our previous life. I can't be as cruel as they were, but I can slowly torment them mentally. I held Anna securely as I sat in the back seat. "Bob, quickly check on Mom, see what's wrong." Bob turned a deaf ear to his own mother's cries, and he wouldn't pay any attention to me either. He got out of the car with a grim expression, and Rose immediately followed him. Jack found his grandmother's moaning annoying and slammed the door as he left. I put headphones on Anna to play a story and asked softly, "Do you regret it?" Fiona grimaced in pain. "What did you say? Being so good to Rose and her child. Do you regret it now? You're injured, and they haven't even asked about you." She was hit where it hurt. "Even you, as the daughter-in-law, don't care. Why should anyone else?" I tried to reason with him, but your son refused. "Nonsense," she snapped angrily, cutting me off. "You're clearly trying to sow discord between us." She has always been good at making excuses for her son, even when the facts are right in front of her. I nodded. "Yes, I am sowing discord. I also told him that you're now a useless burden and that he should abandon you." Fiona froze in an instant. She knew in her heart that I was telling the truth, but she refused to admit it. Emotions of pain, regret, and fear flickered across her pale face one after another. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. Taking advantage of her daze, I got out of the car with the child in my arms. Before me lay the deliberately destroyed broken bridge, the last path to the safety shelter. People nearby, fearing a scramble for supplies, had blown up the bridge deck, leaving only narrow paths on either side, just wide enough for one person. We've finally reached Fiona's final resting place. Bob approached and whispered softly, "It seems we'll have to walk. Let Rose scout ahead first. She's lighter. In the previous life, he chose me. In the last life, it was Rose who suggested using Ching-Ching to force me to scout ahead. She threatened me, saying if I wasn't willing to go, she would leave my daughter here forever." Although Anna didn't quite understand why she was being kept, she instinctively burst into loud sobs. Hearing this, Rose's face grew even more smug. It was Bob who sought me out for money, yet she kept making things difficult for me, as if I had stolen the husband who rightfully belonged to her. I walked up to Rose and got straight to the point. "Bob wants you to scout the way. In my previous life, she informed me in exactly this way. Back then, I naively thought she had taken it upon herself. So I went to confront Bob, only to find him siding with Rose." Rose's reaction was exactly the same as mine had been at the time. She stared at me as if I were crazy. "Bob said that. How is that possible?" After saying that, she immediately shouted to Bob. She said to let me scout the path. Her tone was coquettish, waiting for him to uphold justice. Bob didn't expect me to sell him out directly. and his face darkened. But since things had come to this, he simply stopped hiding it. Yes, you go. Rose froze in place. Are you crazy? I said. Bob enunciated each word. You, go, scout, the path. Now, she could hardly believe her ears. The broken bridge was only wide enough for one person on either side, with a bottomless chasm below. A single misstep would mean being dashed to pieces. You bastard, Bob, Rose screamed. I've done so much for you, and you're actually sending me to my death. Bob looked at her expressionlessly. Either scout the way or stay here by yourself right now. I held Anna quietly, standing to the side. In the previous life, it was Rose who came up with the idea to threaten me into scouting by using the child. At that time, Anna was crying her heart out, but she laughed triumphantly. Now it was her turn to experience the taste of such betrayal. Rose stared at Bob intently, finally realizing he was serious. Her face turned deathly pale, and she staggered back a step. Do you know this could kill someone? Rose's voice trembled. Bob completely dropped the pretense. That's exactly why you should go. Rose broke down instantly. I'm not going. She instinctively looked at her son, hoping the spoiled child would speak up for her. Unfortunately, Jack was too engrossed in his game and didn't even lift an eyelid. I interjected at the right moment. If you don't go, even if we make it to the safe house, I won't let your son in. Rose sneered. What does his life or death have to do with me? If you want to die, go die yourselves. These words indeed made Jack look up, his eyes filled with disgust as he stared at his own mother. Just then, Fiona, dragging her broken leg, struggled to crawl out of the car. Rose's eyes lit up, and she suddenly screamed, "Let her go, she's useless anyway." Fiona stepped back in fear. Rose, are you crazy? My leg is broken. Broken is perfect. Rose snarled, you won't live much longer anyway, so you might as well scout a way out for us. Bob looked thoughtfully at Fiona. Actually considering the proposal, Rose became even more frantic at the sight. Let her go, let her go. Fiona looked in horror at the grandson she had once loved the most, but Jack just turned his face away and continued playing his game. Fiona heard it clearly. When Rose pointed at her, her entire face turned pale. She knew better than anyone that her disabled body was the biggest burden. Son, Fiona's voice trembled, on the verge of tears, I'm begging you, wait. I suddenly crouched down and pointed under the bridge. No need to scout the way, it's safe. Beneath the seemingly fragile narrow path, there were actually reinforced steel bars, just hidden at an angle that made them hard to notice. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go. I adjusted the harness on my chest, securing Anna firmly. Bob grabbed me. Better let someone scout the way first. If I die, his access pass becomes invalid. Rose thought he was worried about me, her eyes red with anger. But she didn't dare act arrogantly anymore. Don't worry, I patted him, I work in engineering, this structure is very stable. With that, he bent down and climbed onto the narrow path. This was already my third time crossing this bridge, once forced to scout the way in my past life, and another time when I turned back to retrieve supplies. I skillfully lowered my center of gravity and quickly reached the opposite shore. No problem. Come over quickly, I waved to the other side. Bob then went to get the luggage with relief, while Rose hurriedly rummaged through the trunk. Fiona stood frozen in place, watching everyone busily working, yet no one spared her a second glance. I watched coldly as the hope on her face turned to despair, deciding to use her one last time before she died. It's best to tie yourselves together in pairs. I raised my voice. In case someone slips, there'll be someone to help. Fiona's eyes instantly reddened, thinking I had finally softened and was speaking up for her. However, in just a moment, Bob and Jack quickly fastened their safety ropes and stepped onto the narrow path, one after the other. Rose was still frantically packing her luggage, and by the time she realized it, the father and son were already halfway across. I still have to carry supplies. I can't take you with me. She stammered out the words, then turned and began to climb upward. Fiona finally realized this was her last chance. With an astonishing surge of will to survive, she ignored the excruciating pain from her broken leg and stumbled toward the narrow path. Rose, take me with you. Just as Rose stepped onto the narrow path, Fiona grabbed desperately at the hem of her clothes. Rose panicked and struggled, but her feet suddenly slipped, and both of them screamed as they lost their balance. I immediately covered Anna's eyes and turned her away. Help, save me. The echo in the bridge tunnel amplified the cries for help, like the wailing of ghosts. I couldn't help but look back and saw Rose, most of her body dangling in midair, barely supported by one foot wedged in a crevice, and Fiona was already nowhere to be seen. Bob and his son stood not far away, watching coldly without the slightest intention of lending a hand. To safely cross the narrow path, one had to crawl on all fours. But to help Rose out of her predicament, one must stand up and raise their center of gravity. No one dared to take that risk. Somehow, Rose's backpack strap had gotten tangled around her neck. She lay on her back, struggling and writhing in terror. This was the retribution she deserved for having urged Bob to use Anna to threaten me. But this way, she won't die. So I pretended to be concerned and shouted, "Your neck, look at your neck." It wasn't until the third time I shouted that the panicked Rose finally understood. She probably thought it was Fiona's hand choking her, but after realizing it was just the backpack strap, her expression visibly relaxed. After calming down a bit, she finally managed to free herself and crawled over. "Is Rose okay?" My feigned concern made the other two seem particularly indifferent. Rose rushed up to Bob and slapped him with all her might. "Bob, you're not human." Bob immediately slapped back. "How dare you hit me after you killed my mother?" There wasn't a trace of sadness on his face. He was using his dead mother as a selfish excuse. Rose was slapped so hard her head turned to the side, and only then did she remember that Fiona was gone. She felt a bit guilty and turned to hit her son. "I was about to die and you didn't come to save me." Jack showed no remorse. "If you hadn't been dawdling, how could this have happened? I was only doing it to pack your things. I never asked you to pack them. In my previous life, I was slowly tortured to death, and they had mentally prepared for it for a long time. This time, although I knew Fiona wouldn't survive, abandoning her with my own hands and watching her fall to her death were ultimately different. Everyone's conscience was tormented." I looked at their lifeless expressions with satisfaction, shouldered my backpack, and urged everyone to move toward the village ahead, the only place to rest before nightfall. When we entered the village, we agreed on a story. We claimed we were there to pick up family members who had been traveling before the apocalypse. I'm pretending to be a couple with Bob, and Rose is my sister. At first, they were still nervous, afraid that these people, no longer bound by the law, might go mad. But the village chief warmly received us and even promised to give us a car. Finally, a glimmer of hope appeared in the eyes of the three. Holding Anna, I lowered my head to feed her fruit, not joining in their naive fantasies. We were arranged to sleep in a large communal bed that night. Jack insisted on having a separate room, but his doting grandmother was no longer around, and his own mother had grown distant from him, so no one spoke up for him. Furious, he huddled in a corner playing video games. Bob soon started snoring, and Rose, exhausted, fell into a deep sleep. I lay on my side facing my daughter, staying awake. I knew the village chief would soon bring people over. After what felt like a long time, faint footsteps sounded in the yard. Jack, who hadn't slept yet, heard the commotion and was stunned when he opened the door to the sight of a dense crowd. He instinctively tried to rush out, but after being shoved back, he panicked and scrambled to jump out the window to escape. Plop, outside the window was an outhouse. Jack, who couldn't swim, flailed and cried for help. Awakened by the commotion, Bob and Rose saw the villagers rushing in, and screams erupted instantly. I put the headphones on Anna and held her tightly in my arms. The village chief's cold gaze swept over the crowd. "Are you here to take refuge?" Bob and Rose turned pale with fear, their panicked expressions immediately confirming his suspicion. Jack was dragged back from the outhouse, soaked and covered in unidentified flaky substances, emitting a foul stench. The village chief covered his nose in disgust. "I can let you go, but one of you must stay behind." He paused, then added ominously, "After all, if we can't take shelter, we have to find someone to bear our resentment." The dim yellow light suddenly switched to a bright lamp, illuminating the mottled bloodstains on the wall and the suspicious dark stains on the bed. Apart from me, they were all trembling with fear. The village chief lost his patience, grabbing a melon-cutting knife. "I'll count to 3. If you can't decide, you'll all die. 3, 2, 1. At the last second, Bob pushed Rose out. Keep her. In the previous life, it was me he pushed. At that time, he stole my phone, thinking he had the authorization code, and wanted me dead. I had no choice but to lie to him, saying the authorization code had long been deleted and was only stored in my memory. Although we were eventually released, the nightmare for my daughter and me had only just begun. Seeing Bob's lack of responsibility, the village chief humiliated him, then squinted and said, "You two are the married couple, right?" "No," Bob denied excitedly. "Don't talk nonsense." The village chief carefully compared them. "Strange, her son looks quite like you." He gave me a meaningful look. "Could it be that you're the one who received the safe house information?" "It's not her." Bob hurriedly denied it again, afraid that the village chief would take their place to go to the shelter with me. The village chief laughed heartily. Don't worry, we won't take your spots. With hundreds of us, what good are a few spots? We agreed to live or die together. He turned to me and said, girl, be smart, they are a family, don't die without knowing why. Bob looked at my expressionless face and said guiltily, honey, don't believe him. If there was really danger, why would I push Rose out? The village chief, deliberately trying to stir up trouble, glanced sympathetically at Rose and said, well, it seems he chose for you to die. Rose, having been abandoned multiple times along the way, completely broke down. Convinced she was doomed, she decided to go all out. Helen, you've been deceived by Bob. Actually, before he could finish, Jack suddenly snatched the knife from the person beside him and plunged it straight into Rose's chest. Rose looked down at the knife handle buried in her chest and stared at her son in disbelief. Yuan, Mom, I'm doing this for your own good, Jack said expressionlessly. I don't want to leave you behind to suffer alone. Jack gritted his teeth, his molars grinding audibly, while repeating, for your own good. He stabbed her several more times. I instinctively glanced at my daughter on the bed. Thankfully, she was still fast asleep. Rose clutched her son's pant leg tightly, her nails nearly digging into the fabric. Though it was unplanned, watching her get stabbed to death by her own son was somewhat satisfying. Bob, seeing his son's frenzied state, cautiously glanced at me, afraid I might become suspicious and not take him to the safe house. Rose twitched in the pool of blood for a moment before finally going still. Her wide, staring eyes were fixed directly on the father and son. I felt calmer than when Fiona died, but more than anything, I felt a deep sense of irony. I knew Jack was a scoundrel, but I never imagined he could stoop this low. Even if Rose had really said something just now, I might not have believed it, but he couldn't wait to silence her. The village chief jumped back in shock. Holy shit, I was just trying to scare you, but you actually did it. He turned to us and said, be careful on the road, this guy has violent tendencies. After saying that, he gave a meaningful look, and his subordinate placed 2 knives on the table. Take these for self-defense. My heart sank. This didn't happen in the previous life. The village chief sees Jack's madness and wants us to turn on each other. Killing someone outright is boring. It's better to break their spirit. He let us go, but whether we can make it to the safe house alive is another matter. Village chief, do you have a car with a partition inside? I asked. We need absolute safety. The village chief was taken aback for a moment, then slapped his thigh excitedly. Yes, of course, and it's a luxury car too. We set off overnight. I drove with Anna in the front seat, while the father and son were separated by a partition in the back. Since entering the safe house depended on me, they had no choice but to obey. One abandoned his mother without care. The other killed his own mother with his own hands. Both are ruthless characters. Each held a knife they had taken from the village chief, leaning against the car door, wary of each other. Retribution came too quickly. I barely had to lift a finger to settle the score with 2 enemies. Anna was completely unaware, eating and sleeping and eating in the passenger seat. I watched the approaching hillside, my heart racing. Just 1 more kilometer and I'll reach the safe house, the end of my revenge. It was here that I was tied up in the shade and tortured for days, and it was here that my 3-year-old daughter had her arm brutally severed. The car came to a slow stop. I put the headphones on Anna to play a story, then opened the small window in the partition. Are we there? Bob let out a long sigh of relief. I shook my head. Before we enter the safe house, I have a question. He hasn't realized the crisis yet and said casually, go ahead and ask. In his eyes, I've always been an easy-to-fool idiot, never expecting me to turn against him at the last moment. If it weren't for the apocalypse, you would have already started planning to kill me, right? Bob's body visibly stiffened, and he forced an innocent smile. Darling, what nonsense are you talking? Rose told me everything. Bob's expression instantly shattered, and Jack beside him lunged at the car door to restrain me, but the door was already locked. His reaction completely confirmed what I said. Bob glared fiercely at his son and continued to defend himself. Don't listen to his nonsense. I truly love you. Your mother said it, I said calmly. That day in the car when she broke her leg, she confessed everything. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Bob was completely flustered, his eyes darting around as he searched for an excuse. I watched his pathetic state with amusement. I also know Jack is your biological son. You two look so much alike. Jack frantically reached for the window again, but I easily dodged. I can't just stand by and watch someone die, I said softly. How about this? You kill Jack, and I'll take you to the safe house." Bob's pupils constricted, shocked by how ruthless I was. Before he could react, Jack suddenly stabbed him in the thigh with a knife. Amid the screams, Anna turned her head in confusion. But fortunately, she couldn't reach the window. I rubbed her little hand and said, "It's okay." Then I carried her out of the car. The outline of the safe house was now clearly visible. I hoisted my backpack and carried my daughter as I walked toward it. Even if Bob survived, I would never let him into the safe house. I only wanted them to die in despair, clinging to hope. Compared to the cruelty this father and son inflicted on me in my past life, this was already an act of mercy. The screams behind me gradually faded, and the gloom in my heart finally lifted. I hurried toward the staff with Anna in my arms, only to hear a weak cry from behind. "Wait," and me. I saw Bob, covered in blood, climbing out through the broken car window. It turned out he couldn't break the door open, so he had torn apart the partition instead. Anna had already been taken by the staff, and I calmly passed through the security check. Bob, dragging his injured leg, rushed over and shouted, "We're together." The staff member looked at me, and I shook my head expressionlessly. "I don't know him." Bob hurriedly pulled out his phone. "She registered under my name." After checking the list, the staff member said coldly, "This lady only registered herself and her child." Impossible. Bob's lips trembled as he finally realized I had set the trap from the very beginning. He lunged at me with a ferocious expression, "Bitch." But he was easily restrained by the security guards. "Please leave immediately, or we will take compulsory measures." Bob suddenly fell to his knees, clutching his bleeding thigh and pretending to be pitiful. "At least help me bandage the wound." The staff remained unmoved. "Medical resources are only available to those inside the safe house." He screamed in despair. "Then let me die here." "That might be possible." The staff member raised the gun. "Are you sure you want to stay here forever?" Bob immediately fell silent, suddenly putting on a pitiful expression. "I'm injured. Can you treat my wounds before I leave?" The staff member remained expressionless. "Let me say it again. Medical resources are only available to those inside the safe house." "What about him?" Bob pointed at Jack, who was barely breathing behind him. "He's my son, and he's even more seriously injured." The young man had a knife stuck in his abdomen, and the cloth wrapped around the handle perfectly matched the missing fabric from Bob's sleeve cuff. The staff member's face turned pale. "You monster, how could you harm your own son just for a spot?" "No, Bob only then noticed the flaw in his sleeve and found himself at a loss for words. Suddenly, he saw me standing at the security checkpoint, watching coldly, and grew agitated. "It was her. This wicked woman forced me to kill my son. She said it would get us into the safe house." Before he could finish speaking, a security guard kicked him unconscious and threw him back into the car, then called a tow truck to haul the wrecked vehicle into a nearby ravine. Blood continued to seep from the wound on Bob's thigh. "I hope he wakes up soon." This way, one can more clearly feel the frustration of knowing death is imminent yet being powerless to stop it, just like how I felt in my previous life. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.